Love and work, work and love, that's all there is. Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. The goal of all life is death. Most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. If youth knew, if age could. I cannot think of any need in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection. I have found little that is good about human beings on the whole. In my experience, most of them are trash, no matter whether they publicly subscribe to this or that ethical doctrine, or to none at all. That is something that you cannot say aloud, or perhaps even think. The great question that has never been answered, and which I have not yet been able to answer, despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is what does a woman want? He that has eyes to see and ears to hear may convince himself that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips, betrayal oozes out of him at every pore. Flowers are restful to look at, they have neither emotions nor conflicts. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. The mind is like an iceberg, it floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. Love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. Dreams are often most profound when they seem the most crazy. Just as no one can be forced into belief, so no one can be forced into unbelief. If a man has been his mother's undisputed darling, he retains throughout life the triumphant feeling, the confidence in success, which not seldom brings actual success along with it. A civilization which leaves so large a number of its participants unsatisfied and drives them into revolt neither has nor deserves the prospect of a lasting existence. The ego is not master in its own house. Civilization began the first time an angry person cast a word instead of a rock. If you can't do it, give up. The tendency to aggression is an innate, independent, instinctual disposition in man. It constitutes the powerful obstacle to culture. Illusions commend themselves to us because they save us pain and allow us to enjoy pleasure instead. We must therefore accept it without complaint when they sometimes collide with a bit of reality against which they are dashed to pieces. Neurosis is the inability to tolerate ambiguity. Where it was, their ego shall be. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. The act of birth is the first experience of anxiety, and thus the source and prototype of the affect of anxiety. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. A man who has been the indisputable favorite of his mother keeps for life the feeling of a conqueror. The conscious mind may be compared to a fountain playing in the sun and falling back into the great subterranean pool of subconscious from which it rises. A man should not strive to eliminate his complexes but to get into accord with them. They are legitimately what directs his conduct in the world. Everywhere I go I find that a poet has been there before me. Civilized society is perpetually menaced with disintegration through this primary hostility of men towards one another. The goal towards which the pleasure principle impels us, of becoming happy, is not attainable, yet we may not, nay, cannot give up the efforts to come nearer to realization of it by some means or other. The psychoanalysis of neurotics has taught us to recognize the intimate connection between wetting the bed and the character trait of ambition. Men are strong so long as they represent a strong idea, they become powerless when they oppose it. What a distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. Men are more moral than they think and far more immoral than they can imagine. The first requisite of civilization is that of justice. What we call happiness in the strictest sense comes from the preferably sudden satisfaction of needs which have been dammed up to a high degree. Just as a cautious businessman avoids investing all his capital in one concern, so wisdom would probably admonish us also not to anticipate all our happiness from one quarter alone. Whoever loves becomes humble. Those who love have, so to speak, pawned a part of their narcissism. Analysis does not set out to make pathological reactions impossible, but to give the patient's ego freedom to decide one way or another. Every normal person, in fact, is only normal on the average. His ego approximates to that of the psychotic in some part or other and to a greater or lesser extent. Children are completely egoistic. They feel their needs intensely and strive ruthlessly to satisfy them. It is impossible to overlook the extent to which civilization is built upon a renunciation of instinct. America is the most grandiose experiment the world has seen, but, I am afraid, it is not going to be a success. The liberty of the individual is no gift of civilization. It was greatest before there was any civilization. What progress we are making! In the Middle Ages they would have burned me. Now they are content with burning my books. America is a mistake. A giant mistake. Sadism is all right in its place, but it should be directed to proper ends. The doctor should be opaque to his patients and, like a mirror, should show them nothing but what is shown to him. Opposition is not necessarily enmity, it is merely misused and made an occasion for enmity. Yes, America is gigantic, but a gigantic mistake. Like the physical, the psychical is not necessarily in reality what it appears to us to be. Analogies, it is true, decide nothing, but they can make one feel more at home. We believe that civilization has been created under the pressure of the exigencies of life at the cost of satisfaction of the instincts. A belligerent state permits itself every such misdeed, every such act of violence, as would disgrace the individual. Neurotics complain of their illness, but they make the most of it, and when it comes to talking it away from them they will defend it like a lioness her young. A certain degree of neurosis is of inestimable value as a drive, especially to a psychologist. Obviously one must hold oneself responsible for the evil impulses of one's dreams. In what other way can one deal with them? Unless the content of the dream rightly understood is inspired by alien spirits, it is part of my own being. Incidentally, why was it that none of all the pious ever discovered psychoanalysis? Why did it have to wait for a completely godless Jew? We have long observed that every neurosis has the result, and therefore probably the purpose, of forcing the patient out of real life, of alienating him from actuality. The psychical, whatever its nature may be, is itself unconscious.